with the associations and schools, with the trade unions, academic world, third sector, and also parents. So there is a common interest in this topic, and we are really happy to be here to present you the pedagogical guidelines that are part of our integrated education system from birth until 6 years old. As you know, the pedagogical guidelines of the integrated system from 0 to 6 are a result of the main legislation of the Legislative Decree 65, one of the delegation of the Law 107. And the processing of the pedagogical lines could be considered as one of the key topic of the whole integrated education system from 0 to 6 for the creation of a national curriculum that is one of the quality parameters that are provided for early education and care that has been suggested by the European Commission. And other points are about accessibility, professionalism of the staff, evaluation, governance, and funding. So it should be underlined that the pedagogical guidelines will not replace the principles coming from the legislation for the curriculum of preschool that have been updated thanks to the contribution of new scenarios of 2018. But that it should be like a framework for our system, a kind of infrastructure, let's say, architecture for us. So these guidelines have been processed and drafted as a draft, and it is the result of the work of a commission that has been set up by the Ministry of Education, that is chaired by the technical manager, Giancarlo Cerini, and we are very pleased to welcome him today. Of course, the pathway of these pedagogical guidelines has been quite suffered in a way, has been quite troubled because it is something that happened during the lockdown period. So I believe that the draft that has been created by the Commission in that period should have an added value, because the Commission was able to grasp all the aspects related to the suffering and the pain that affected the world, the school sector, and maybe the youngest children from 0 to 6 were deeply affected by this situation, by these restrictions. And of course, this had a deep impact on their parents and families. So I would like to thank all the school staff, the executives, the directors, the headmasters. I would like to thank them, and would like to thank all people who all the operators of this sector. So the drafting of those guidelines have been drafted by the Commission, and the Commission also relied on the consultancy, the advice of some experts that gave support to the Commission members. It has been a in progress work. We didn't want to create a final document, a top-down document that was including only principles to be complied with. But our hope, our idea was that of creating a document that was shared by the operator of this sector. And now the Commission wants to offer this document to the Ministry of Education only after a public consultation at local level. So we really encourage all the operators, stakeholders, to bring proposals, to provide some suggestions, so that we can improve the draft document. So this is the purpose, the goal of this workshop. So today we're going to start this national public consultation. So this will be the first phase. We'll listen to the authoritative speeches of some members of the Commission. And among them, as I already said, also the technical manager of the Commission, Giancarlo Cerini. And later on, we'll also have a speech by our Minister of Education, Professor Patrizio Bianchi, who is really aware of the importance of starting and launching this public consultation campaign. We also have here Francesca Pugliesi. She's the head of the technical secretariat of the ministry. So thank you for her support, and I would like to thank her also for her enthusiasm. So now I would like to give the floor to Francesca Pugliesi, who will be the chairwoman of our workshop. So thank you. Thank you. And then, of course, there is some time left. I would like to give you some technical information about how this national dissemination campaign will take place. Something that will take place in the next few weeks. So thank you. Have a successful workshop. Thank you. Mrs. Palermo. So first of all, I would like to thank on behalf of our Minister for Education, I'd like to thank the Commission, and in particular, a special thanks go to the President of the Commission and all to the members, of course, to the members who worked hard in order to draft these guidelines, pedagogical guidelines. And I would like to thank also the department and the department, and also the general director of the department, Mr. Lombardo, and also Maria Assunta Palermo. It has been a very great job. So they made a lot of efforts in order to draft these guidelines, starting from the Legislative Decree 65 of 2017. So today we are starting this public consultation, and I would like to remind also the words by Giancarlo Cerini about these guidelines, like a popular ballad, because for many years we have collected a lot of signatures by the associations and the school operators. So a lot of people involved in the child care system. So let's say that this provision has been very important, and it is in line with the framework that has been set up by the European Commission. And this has been also shared by the local administrators all over Italy. So I think we wanted to continue this sharing approach. We want to share this document with all the protagonists and all the operators of the childhood sector. So this legislative decree wants to enhance and promote the 06 system, both the public and public and private, and it has to be a child-centered system. This is the purpose of the legislation, and this is also repeated by the Next Generation EU, because our purpose should be that of fighting the very deep inequalities that are still existing, and maybe they also are worse, they worsened. So we have to fight inequalities, increasing the quality level of the services provided to very small children. So I think that a lot of people who are listening to us now from different parts of Italy, and I hope that they will provide also some input in order to improve this system. And this system should be extended and applied all over Italy so that we can really protect the rights of children. So the mission 4 of the PNRR says that we have to invest constantly in the extension of the services for children from 0 to 6 years old. And for 03, we have to achieve the 33% goal. And so the European funds will be useful in order to achieve this goal. But there is a lot of work to be done in order to improve the quality of preschool and nurseries. Italy has also just approved an important legislation, an important act for early, is the so-called Family Act. So it's a kind of economic support and subsidy to the most disadvantaged families. I would like to thank again. I would like to thank all of you. This is a law that do not belong to our government, but it is a law that is shared and approved and supported by the whole parliament, because its origin date back to the last legislature, but today we have some available resources in order to implement this legislation. So we have to look ahead in order to improve the quality of education for children, all the children in Italy. So I would like to. So I hope you will appreciate this workshop, and as so the minister is not here yet, but he will join us later on. So I had to. So I now give the floor to the president of the Commission, so Professor Giancarlo Cerini. Thank you, Francesca. So good afternoon to everyone. I would like to welcome all the guests and also all the participants. And I hope that the minister will join us soon. So first of all, I'd like to say that we are very happy, not only as technicians, but also as citizens, because in the last few months, now we have more attention towards the 06 system. So some important choices have been made by the government. So also the pedagogy world and the economics show interest towards this sector now. Also considering the pandemic that is ongoing, still ongoing, and of course the pandemic is creating quite difficult circumstances. But talking about the 06 segment, I think that perhaps was able to stay open for a longer time compared to other education levels. But of course, there are some difficulties, some weaknesses. For example, there are some lack of participation from some parents. And also there has been, as you know, a demographic drop that was for example, in 2020, we had a drop in the birth of 3.8%. Of course, many actions have been already taken, as Mrs. Puglisi said, but there is also the need for a network of operators and of nurseries and preschools. And there are 23,000 nurseries, preschools, and 12,000 nurseries. So as a whole, we have 35,000 schools. So these are really, it gives us a lot of hope. So the 06 segment should provide us with an unitary overview, a picture of children, and should also able to meet all the concerns and worries from a social and also from a pedagogical point of view, as well as from an institutional and organizational viewpoint. So we should also talk about a cultural perspective, and I would like to focus on this today. So it's important that our approach will be focused on children, and we also wanted to meet his needs for development, for growth, and for learning. So I would like to talk about this, to define this as the Italian 06 segment. Is the result of an alliance between nurseries and the preschools. They the origins are quite old. We have been celebrating the 50 years anniversaries of the public preschools, for example. So nurseries and preschools have a very long tradition in Italy. And we want, of course, to respect the identity and the peculiarities of both structures. So we want to strengthen both nurseries and preschools, and we want to create a consistent context. We want to develop a pedagogical language that is based on dialogue, where the two traditional segments are able to exchange their best practices and best approaches. So, of course, and our commission drafted a number of documents. The pedagogical documents are never enough in order to launch an actual reform affecting the educational policies. So we have basically three documents, the pedagogical guidelines, which provide the framework, and then two operating documents. So the national guidance 03, this is quite a novelty. And the Commission is also working on this specific segment from 0 to 3. And then also the instructions for the 06 segment dating back to 2012. With a link also with the following education step. So I'm very proud that so I am a president of this commission for 1 year approximately, and we met many times. We had a lot of plenary meetings and also individual, more specific meetings with pedagogists, with teachers. So this work in progress produced other documents that I would like to mention here briefly, guidelines for remote distance education links, because maybe we tried to give some approach for online activities to be carried out by very small children in order to maintain the link between children, parents on one side, and teachers of the nursery schools. So the pedagogical guidelines wanted to provide a kind of a framework, general framework for the 06 segment based on the pedagogical and scientific research, based on the best actions that have been created on the field. We also based ourselves on the European documents that will be explained and illustrated today, such as the quality indicators and also a very important recommendation dating back to May 2019, and also the Italian document that were mentioned by Mrs. Puglisi, and Decree 65. Now I would like to take a short look at the structure of the document. It is divided into 6 chapters. The first and the sixth chapters are more based on institutional aspects, on institutional issues, and the central part is dedicated to the pedagogical aspects. The language that we used is non-academic. I think it is a language that is suitable for operators, school operators, such as teachers, but it is a kind of is a language that should be also suitable for parents and the public at large. So I would like to read the first chapter, the titles, The Rights of the Children. So here we are telling a very nice story. So we are moving here from a welfare-based system to an educational project. So we are celebrating the 50 years anniversary from the foundation of the public preschool, Italian preschool. So nursery should be synonymous for a caring approach, and they should also be able to meet the social needs that are different from one territory to the other. And with this 06 project, we want to change this social need. Of course, we want also to help. We want to turn this demand into an educational project that is based and funded on children in order to to promote the development of children, also creating a suitable environment. So this is a kind of introduction for the guidelines. We are very proud of our history, our origins. Then the second chapter is the training ecosystem. So here, in this case, we wanted to we described the main changes that took place in technology, in families, in society, and of course they have an impact on our schools. So the educational network should also meet this need for change, and we also have to be to increase the well-being of children, and also schools could be also be an opportunity to establish an open dialogue with the parents and families.
Now we have to bring a trusting relationship, participation, not generically in terms of George or Garber words, liberty and participation. Of course, this is important, but the main idea when you say that you have to participate within a community is that you have to learn together how to accompany and how to anticipate the transformation of the society without being stuck with dialogue, with events, with day-to-day relationships, and with the different looks that we can have with children and with adults. And therefore, this will be an experience intended for parents. it should be conceived as awareness-raising occasion for institutions as well. We can build up social cohesion elements without being stuck by the very fast-going changes within the society. So we have to shift from me, myself to ourselves. And this is not just a motto. It's not just advertising. No, it must be rooted in the small communities that are disseminated and they need to grow up. Now we move to the third main chapter. The children. Of course, the children are the core of our publication. Our educational guidelines are intended to rediscover childhood, not in a generical terms or not in a naive term, but we need to seize the evolution dynamics which are rooted in the children destiny. Of course, we have mentioned this in very brief terms. Also included in Article 1 of the Legislative Decree number 65. Think that they say that some rights need to be guaranteed and respected in terms of needs for the development of potential. When I hear the word potential, then of course I can think of the great thinkers, but also the need for sociality, the need for relationships, autonomy, and I think of Montessori's approach, creativity, and I think of Malaguzzi's approach. I think of learning possibilities, and I could go on and on with this DNA traits, which are so precious. The document does not make any specific reference, but behind these lines, we can see the great thinkers, the founding fathers of modern pedagogy. And we should also embark on a hunt of the authors, of the main sources, in order to be able to connect experiences, studies. Of course, the experience field, which is a specific pedagogical term, and I wonder, maybe John Dewey already thought about this when he spoke about experience, and not just in terms of doing, but in terms of an element of knowledge, evolution of knowledge. So this is a very important DNA trait which invokes for specific responses. We can mention play, games, developing a specific language, a specific thinking, skills that need to be brought forward within the children. And this is some sort of credit that needs to be offered to the children without neglecting the obligations of the adults. Of course, in the fourth chapter, whose title is Curriculum and Projects, we state that the children should never be left alone. We tend to think in other terms, but it is not sufficient just to welcome children. Of course, children are welcomed in a high intensity environment in terms of relationships. One of the key words is the idea of care. Of course, we have to use a very careful sight, a very careful approach to any manifestation that might think ordinary or trivial, but no, it's not just primary needs we're talking about. We need also to foster initiative, autonomy. And this is the real value of the rooms and the educational environment in general. It needs to be conceived as an educational element, important for relationship, for routines, and us, the adults, have to be able to accompany in a competent way the growth of the children. And of course, we had to spend a single specific investment on professions, the professional aspect of teachers, educators. This is the main tricks of the job for educators and teachers. Of course, we also have a mild evaluation system, or not even evaluation system, but the capacity of read the development of skills in a broad way. So I don't want to dwell too much on this, but I just wanted to sum up this profile that we really hope to be able to see and further develop through a more robust training session, a life learning session, using clusters. I mean, we grouped some characteristics together, characteristics of this profession, and we devised 5 different profiles. We would really appreciate if these were the main characteristics of any teacher or educator. And actually, I mentioned and I use the word adult. We know that our teachers, educators, and the staff in general tend to cooperate with one another, and this is a great resource. And we really advocate for continuing on this path. So it must be a welcoming adult. There's no point in listing the characteristics. You can all imagine what I mean. It also must be an encouraging adult. This term was taken from the European document on the main quality indicators that was already mentioned. A director, cinema director, it comes from our documents, this definition, a responsible adult, because we need to have an ethical and professional approach, and a participating adult who can cooperate, listen, and work in team. I only mentioned the titles of the document, so I invite you to read the document yourself. So we have made a specific portrait of the institutions and all the different actors and stakeholders, so the very active private sector. And today we have to say that we need to make this photo a dynamic world. We need to put into practice this project. It is a cooperation project that needs to be implemented, also thanks to these innovations that are included within the legislative decree number 65. I'm thinking of pedagogical coordination, on-site training, and also the idea of the so-called spring sections, the very early childhood sections within a school. And in general, we have to think positive about childhood and early childhood. Why do I mention this positive imagery? Because in the age range 0 to 6, like Francesca Puglisi said before, quite rightly, she mentioned the popular ballad. Well, today we tend to say that it is a narration, it is storytelling. So we need to get emotional, we need to foster a positive image of our Italian education system. Every administrator, every parent, every citizen must be proud of their own neighborhood, their city, of the fact that there is a nursery school, a pre-primary school, a primary school cluster, integration services, so a plurality of services. If we wanted to be in line with the European standards, 33%, we want to be more ambitious. Let's go up to 40%. So we really want to be European in these terms, European citizens. Then we need to build this imagery, and we need to sustain the services development. They need to be beautiful inside and outside. They must be bright and welcoming, cozy, a real campus, because that would be the ideal situation. The nursery school, pre-primary, a playground, a common area. How beautiful our cities would be if they were like this, and how beautiful the spaces dedicated to children and parents would be if our cities were like this. And this could be the right response to the demand for services that comes from family, which is not taken for granted. And that would be an excellent response to the rights of children. They really have the right to see this in concrete terms. Thank you, and a good continuation for you all. Thank you a lot. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Mr. President, please, you mentioned this document and this article. Let me read it aloud for every participant, because this is where our social and cultural insight is from children from 0 to 6 in order to develop creativity, autonomy, learning in an adequate, affectionate, ludic, and educational setting. You have to guarantee the same opportunities of care, education, and game by overcoming any barriers in terms of culture, ethnic groups. So with these words, I would like to leave the floor to Professor Susanna Mantovani, a member of the Commission and honorary professor of University of Studies of Milan Bicocca. She will dwell on some of the pedagogical aspects of this document. Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Giancarlo. I am very honored to be part of many, many commissions, starting from the Orientation Commission back in 91. And so it is with a real participation that I am very happy to be here today. I hope to be in a position to be able to speak after our president's intervention. The pedagogical lines, the educational guidelines that you already know probably in our country, and as Giancarlo remembered, it is said in the introduction, they are based both on the relations and the results of research in education. So Giancarlo invited us to read through the lines and to see the ideas of the great Italian thinkers, and not only Italian thinkers from the past and from the present, but first and foremost for early childhood pedagogy, but also based on good practices disseminated in our country, which are well known in Europe, and not only in Europe. There are many of these examples, many good practices, not just in the main areas. There are already integrated system examples in this period. It's from the bottom that we have seen many requests even before the publication of the guidelines. I was surprised to see how many experimentation and coordination tables experiences ongoing, also in small centers, small size centers, not just the big cities. And this is why we have to say, why we have to think in terms of positive approach. Early childhood is at the core of our attention, and we are all involved in this aspect. This attention makes us all, the members of the Commission, but also the politicians, the teachers, the educators, the participants who are listening to our webinar, we are responsible in terms of orienting with prudence and with courage. It is not one of the opposite of the other. No, we have to use courage and of course, prudence, because this is what times requires us to do. It is a difficult time. We know it. Ms. Palermo said it at the beginning. Of course, we all thought of the lockdown period. We have mentioned these aspects also in our document, but we wanted to be aware that we should never forget what happened. But we also think of the many professionals operating in the nursery schools, families, all the decision-making actors who are and will be engaged in developing a learning opportunity for children in order to build up a cultural horizon, which is very important and which is intended to build up and to maintain the mosaic of the services of the different nursery schools, the different types, different dissemination in our national territory. So we need to think of this metaphor, lights, bright lights, that are not only seen, but they can be also imagined. So each single small piece of this mosaic needs to be recognized in terms of identity, but we need to concentrate without fragmenting the resources devoted to develop the system as well as the possible innovation. This is something that is really important and that Francesca Polisi worked on. For example, the idea of the clusters. While there are some nucleuses that have some potential that can be interpreted according to the specific needs of the territory in many different ways. We did not want to enter into details about that because, again, it's a potential. And so we need someone to be able to interpret it, but we also need to work on the educational coordination. It is an existing aspect, but for the first time, this is the first time it was clearly mentioned in a document devoted to early childhood care and education. Children are at the core, at the heart of our guidelines, as set out in the law 65, sorry. Of course, the starting point is the right for educational system that must be qualified, accessible, inclusive. Of course, I am repeating many concepts that are already stated in European documents, but not all our participants, may be young students or young teachers and educators who have just entered the school world, might not have read all these documents. Now, qualification for any level of schooling and education lies on the professional quality of human resources. So in terms of basic training, which is included in the decree, and in a perspective of applying these guidelines, the life learning training and learning of teachers, of pedagogical coordinators is crucial to coordinate the different services in order to build up an integrated system. So permanent learning must be really underlined. It is already existing in many parts of our country, but it is not widespread, not at the same level. So we need to revise this. It could be reoriented in the light of the specific needs of the local territories. Of course, children have the right for qualified services, for well-being. This was already mentioned. Well-being intended in terms of the recent documents, a good equilibrium between health and affection, but also the possibility to develop their potential. I would like to move on now to the 2000 days of children. Now it is fashionable to think about 1000 days, but I prefer to say 2000 days. Why so? Well, because children live through a very plastic and sensitive time, which is rich in potential. So children move from the complete dependence from the adult to autonomy. And they can, or actually they do already, gather cultural elements. They understand, they see and recognize the different specificity of the environment they live in different contexts. They can develop hundreds of languages, like Malaguti used to say, or even 1000 different skills. To do so, they need rich environments in terms of positive sociality with the other children, with the educators and the teachers. They need the cooperation between the services, the schools and the families. And therefore, professional investments also in these aspects. Professionals of the 0 to 6 sector are already doing, but they must continue to perform their investments and great cooperation with the families. This cultural heritage is already existing, but it must be strengthened. It's something that the 0 to 3 services and the school can give as an example, as a gift, also for the following levels of education. And in these times, mutual support and communication with the families is fundamental. In the guidelines, we say that each child is unique, and to grow up, they need the others. Other children, other competent adults, happy parents who can count on the support of the services, on good quality schools. And of course, merging these ideas is not in contrast with the nursery school needs. There's no counterbalance between two elements. But this is the educational reality. In the past, we saw the very early childhood care centers being brought to life, but now this is not the case. Today, we needed to change our mindset. We really try to embark on this alliance between school services and families. In these years, these 2000 days of the children, the differences between the development of each single child is very diverse, and a teacher must be able to seize it. So in this age, there are huge changes, huge differences, and the adult must seize it, must give value to this by intending the continuity as a holistic approach, the capacity to seize the particularity of the development of the single child in order to orient in an efficient way the children to try things through games and educational proposal in order to develop their skills. Care and games are not in contrast with a curriculum which is based on observation, documentation, and different proposals. A symposium of the National Group of the Nursery Schools back in 2016 was called Curriculum is Responsibility. Now, this idea of having a good relationship between in each single level, game and education, should be also should also be in our minds. The children grow up, they change, and these transformation can be addressed in different ways. We need to seize and respect the rhythm of each child, of each group, with a consistent and shared idea of the trajectory, of the pathway to embark on. Of course, we need professional tools, good documents. We can say that in Italy we have very good documents and we're good thinkers, but we also need to share decisions with the families, and this is the heritage of the educational system, which requires a very high profile skills. Of course, nowadays with these difficulties, unemployment, the difficulty of working and taking care of the children at the same time, of course, what is the response? Well, we have to be brought together, we have to help the children, and we have to think that the rights are at the heart of our guidelines, but we can see very clearly the inequalities, poverty, and the diversity in terms of skills and cultural background. So it is important to have in all single services, in all single primary schools, public or private, may be, to be welcoming. We need to include all children, all families. Well, this is something that we need to take and embark on, starting from the guidelines. Think of the importance of the 0 to 3 years services as compared to the primary school in terms of handicapped children, fragile children. They have, at the moment, they do not have the same support, the same rights. I think that an integrated system should be put in place in order to get rid of these barriers. Now, we know that diversity is also opportunity. In order to develop from the very early age a sentiment of trust, mutual responsibility. There are differences in terms of gender, uh, maturity, skills, language, and in the freedom of a game can be seen, so we can identify the specific supports that have to be provided by the adults. I'm thinking of a plurality of languages. This is a topic I really care for, not just spoken languages. I am also thinking of sign languages and the possibility for educational systems to create contexts where the approach and the motivation to use different languages is essential for our time. So when I think of languages, I also think of technologies. Now the children have the right for qualified places within and outside the schools. They need to be well kept in terms of aesthetic, of care, the responsibility for the environment, and they need time. They need for the right time within the day, within the school year, that must be in line with everybody's need. And this, the time for leisure of our children, of our kids, it is very important for the 0 to 6 age range. But time is an educational aspect. Of course, throughout the school year, you have to think of leisure activity, of education, outdoor activities. These are key elements for the children development in order to explore, learn, build significant relationships. Now, the care for time is another specific need for the 0-6 range of age. Of course, we have to think of the fluidity of transitions that can prepare for adaptation, but also we have to focus in specific activities, games, and self-regulation without no stress. Every child is unique and they need others. They need for wise, passionate and creative adults. And they need to be in relation with other children. Thanks to this positive sociality experiences, which is at the heart of the daily activity of preschools, everybody can be listened to, they can play an instrument, and also see that they are a member of an orchestra or of a group. I really like now to mention the popular ballad idea in a framework of the main founding values within the guidelines: welcoming, participation, democracy. This is a very important idea. We have to enrich our heritage with good practices. We know that we are confronted with a very difficult times and new situation, completely new, and all of us, the operators of the school, we need to provide for innovation. It must be brave and it must be prudent. Thanks for your attention. Thank you, Professor Mantovani. Now I will leave the floor to the coordinator of the ECEC coordinator, Ms. Geraldine Lebro. She will be talking about the 0-6 system within the European program. And I also would like to welcome our Minister, Patrizio Bianchi. Good afternoon. I'm listening. I'm here with you. Thank you. Please, Geraldine.
Thank you very much. So I will be speaking in English. So I give you a few minutes to switch to the English channel while I share my slides. I have prepared a few slides in Italian, so it will support the interpretation and what I have to say to you. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and hello from Brussels. It's really nice to be in Italy, even if it's just virtual, and have the opportunity to speak to you. I have been indeed coordinating a European working group for the past 2 years, which worked on early childhood education and care. It brought together 35 countries, as well as a number of European and international institutions and associations. We had a number of meetings, we had a number of seminars. One of them was in Milan, and that was really interesting to discuss staff professionalization in early childhood in Italy, as there was so much going on at the time already. So I wanted to thank you for inviting me and congratulate you on the great work which has been achieved. It's great to have pedagogical guidelines which cover also young children. This is not the case in every European country, and it's really good to see that this is being developed. It's really good also to see that there is a unified approach between nurseries and preschools, because we believe it's a continuum and there should not be different approaches for the children who are all in early childhood. So today I will say a few words on what we do at a European level. So first of all, I want to mention that the basis for everything we do is the 2019 Council recommendation on high quality early childhood education and care systems. So a Council recommendation is a policy document which has been adopted by the 27 ministers of education, who agreed on what quality should be in the early years. And it was accompanied by a European quality framework for early childhood education and care, which says that there is no quality if you don't have 5 strong pillars. The first one is about access, and it's about making sure that all children have indeed access to available, affordable, and accessible early childhood education and care settings. The second pillar of quality is to have well-trained staff, and I will talk about that later. The third pillar is about curriculum, making sure that there are pedagogical guidelines for all children, also the younger ones. So well done, Italy, for that. And the fourth one is about monitoring and evaluation at every level, local, national level, also in the settings themselves, in the nurseries and the kindergartens. There should be measures in place to measure and evaluate whether there is quality and how to improve it. And last but not least, the fifth pillar of quality is to make sure that there is a good governance in place, so that all levels and all stakeholders are talking to each other, and that there is relevant and adequate funding and a sufficient level of funding to support access to all children and family and training of staff. So in this European group, which I coordinated for the past 2 years, we talked about two things. One was inclusion, and the other one was staff professionalization. So in the toolkit for inclusive early childhood education and care, we offer a lot of approaches and ideas on how to make education and care in the early years more inclusive, more accessible to all children. And it includes actually a chapter on curricula and pedagogical guidelines and the importance for them to be designed in an inclusive way. Then the other document, which I'm going to talk about today, is the report on how to recruit, train, and motivate well-qualified EC staff. So you have the link here, you can look at it, there are lots of information in it. The work we did was based on research findings from across Europe and also international research and policy recommendations which already existed. And then we looked at different approaches and strategies, and we provide lots of examples on how to improve the whole professionalization of the staff in this sector. The target group for this report is very vast. It's all the national and local decision makers. We know that in municipalities, early childhood is a very big responsibility. It's for employers, especially in the private sector. It's for trade unions and other social partners, also associations who are involved in early years care. And it's for all education and training providers like universities or institutions providing vocational education and training. So we came up to some conclusions, which I will present briefly. So the first conclusion, the general one, is that the quality of early childhood education and care provision can only increase when staff are available in sufficient numbers, that there is no staff shortage, that they are well qualified, educated, and motivated to stay in the profession, because we know there's a lot of turnover in the profession, and it is always a challenge to keep people in a profession which is often not very well paid and not always very considered as not considered as well as it should be. So to achieve this main conclusion, we offer 5 statements. The first one is that all the stakeholders who are involved in organizing and providing ECEC, so the cities, the state, the regions, the private employers, they all share the responsibility to make this profession attractive by improving working conditions. And they are also all responsible to offer professional development to ECEC staff. The second conclusion is that the sector needs to be recognized as a very important sector, and that in turn will have a positive impact on the recruitment and retention of staff. So we see that the sector of early childhood education and care is not sufficiently recognized for its role in terms of education and inclusion. It's often considered as a service to facilitate parents' employment and the reconciliation between private life and professional life, and this is good, but we really would like to have a bigger emphasis on the educational aspect of early childhood education and care. And we also think that that would result in an improvement in professional development opportunities, career prospects, salaries, and working conditions of ECEC staff. The third statement is that to make this professional sector more attractive for people to work in it, we need to be a bit more creative when it comes to recruiting people. So in the report, we offer a number of ideas in terms of how you can diversify the roles in the kindergartens and the nurseries to develop new types of profession, new types of professional roles, which might appeal to new people who have maybe not considered working in the sector. And we also talk about developing new pathways into the profession. So for instance, validation of prior learning, or maybe trying to recruit people from different backgrounds, also trying to recruit more men into the profession. So it's all about looking at recruitment of staff in a very creative and novel angle. The fourth statement is about establishing and using a common set of core competencies for all the staff who work in the sector. So that exists in some countries, but not all. And quite often it covers the staff who work with the older children from 3 to 6, but maybe not for people who work with younger children. So this report proposes a set of European competencies, and I will speak about it a little bit more afterwards. And we think this can help the staff who work in the sector to be more appealed to stay in the profession and to provide more quality education and care. And finally, the fifth statement is about participation in high quality training, both at initial stage and also continuing professional development. We know it's absolutely key to offer quality education and care to the young children. And for that, we suggest that it's really important to identify and then remove the obstacles to staff participation in continuing professional development. And there are a lot of obstacles. And we also propose the idea that we need to increase the range of learning opportunities for staff, for instance, by increasing work-based learning, team-based learning, coaching, and peer support. So based on this, I would like to give you a few more information. So here you see the structure of our report. First chapter is about describing who works in the sector, and we talk about assistants, core practitioners, and leaders. And when we were in Milan, maybe Signora Mantovani will remember that we had a really interesting discussion about the assistants, because the way we define assistants is not necessarily the way they are defined in Italy. But we believe that assistants can really offer a lot of help in the nurseries and in the kindergartens to the core practitioners, defined here as operatori principali, who are usually the kindergarten teachers or the main person in charge in the classroom or in the nursery room. And then we have the leaders, who are the heads of the centers or the preschools. In the second chapter, we look at how to make the professions more attractive, and I will not go into that today. And in the third chapter, it's all about staff training and really insisting on the fact that this is a key factor for quality. And here I have highlighted in red the mapping of competencies, which I want to show you a little bit. So this mapping is structured in 6 areas: knowledge and understanding, ECEC practice, working with children, working with families and the local community, working with internal or external colleagues, and professional development. And this is obviously all linked to the implementation of pedagogical guidelines, which are developed, because these pedagogical guidelines will fall into each of these 6 areas, and the staff need to be trained in these 6 areas on how to implement the pedagogical guidelines. And for each of these sectors, we propose a set of competencies for each of the 3 categories that we consider. So I will just give you an example. This is the set of competencies we propose for core practitioners. So for instance, the kindergarten teachers. I will not go into detail for each of them because you can find them in the report. But then you see on the left, you find the 6 areas, which I mentioned before: knowledge and understanding, ECEC practice, and so on. And then you have the proposed set of competencies. We think that this set of core competencies are really useful for people to discuss around the training and the evaluation of staff. So this is useful for defining initial training programs, making sure that all these competencies are covered. This is useful for discussing with staff who are actually working in nurseries and kindergartens. They can discuss within the teams, are we covering all the competencies between us? This is useful for each individual to speak with their leader, their director. This, I think I would like to improve my competence in this or that domain. So I would like to follow a training on that domain, etc. So we think this is a good tool to foster discussions. This is a European proposal by the group, but of course each country and also even each setting can work with this framework and use it and adapt it to its own needs. So this is what I wanted to say about the results of this working group. There's a lot in this report, so I just recommend that you have a look at it and digest it, because there's so much to work with. But before finishing my presentation, I wanted to highlight that Europe also offers some funding for the professionalization of staff who works in the sector through the Erasmus Plus program. So this is not very well known, but this program is not just for higher education students, it's also for people who work in early childhood. So it's for the students who are in vocational training or higher education to start working in the field, but it's also for all the people who already work in the field. The program allows you to go abroad whenever we can finally go abroad again, to do some job shadowing, to work with other colleagues, and to also follow some courses, to attend some events. So I just wanted to highlight that a new call for proposals has been published last week. The first deadlines to submit applications are in May, so it's really the time now to look at it. Most importantly, you need to contact your national agency in Italy. I think it's Indire who is doing that. and they will give you all the information on how to apply. And this is really a good tool also to professionalize the staff in the sector, and also to make your pedagogical guidelines known all across Europe by working with other colleagues. These are a few addresses where you can follow what we are doing. We will be organizing some webinars in the near future. So if you follow us on these social media, you will know the dates, where we will go into more details about specific topics explored by the working group. Thank you. I need to stop.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Yes, I'll stop sharing.
I would like to thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it were very clear, and you said that in all the European documents and also in the actions from the Commission, what the importance of the lifelong learning of as teachers, assistants for early childhood services. So thank you, Geraldine, so much. I'd like to apologize with the representative of the municipalities, but now I think I have to give the floor to the minister, because later on there will be the ministry, the Council of Ministry. So we have to we had to change the program, the agenda for today. So I give the floor to Professor Patrizio Bianchi, Minister for Education. Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. I'd like to thank you all, and sorry, I apologize for my being late, but I really wanted to be here today. Thank you. I would like to thank all the Commission and especially Giancarlo for your brilliant work. Not only to give some guidelines, but also to remind and to underline three things. 06 segment is perhaps one of the most difficult challenges that we are facing in terms of also from a social point of view. I think it's very important to stress the importance of the social challenge. So the pandemic has underlined the social problems, social issues. So schools are the places where equality can be created, can be generated. And it's also the place where inequalities become more evident. The Commission has made some very clear decisions and choices. So we have to fight inequalities in schools. So we cannot disregard this aspect. So we always, there is no time for recovery. We have to start, give a good start to all the children, starting from an early age. And when the Commission says that we have to underline the concept of democracy, democracy should be always there. Democracy means that we have to be aware of our rights. We have to be aware of our rights. And also we have to be aware of the rights of the children. So in this way we can achieve democracy. That is why we can say that the nursery and preschools are the mirror of society. As Professor Montavani said before, she said a very good thing, but also something that for children is very important, the responsibility of adults. You said something very important. That is why I'm talking about a social challenge, because the schools are based on the responsibility of adults. And I would say that in the past we didn't work very well on in order to strengthen the culture of responsibility of adults towards the children. I think we didn't make a lot of efforts from this point of view. And the Republic, the Italian Republic, recognizes individual rights. So the Republic does not give rights, but recognizes rights. So the Republic recognizes rights, and these are rights. These rights include the participation into the life of the Republic, so the right to fully participate into the life of democracy and the Republic, and also rights of solidarity at civil and social level. So that is why we have to invest on 06 segment. And we have to strengthen this principle of solidarity. It's a really building block of our democracy. We cannot disregard this. If we look at the distribution of services in 06, in the 3 and 36, so far, I think that we are not protecting the rights of children in the same way. So we are lagging behind. There is a split between these two, the two segments, 06 and 36. And especially from a geographical point of view, there is a divide between, especially in the northern, in the southern part of Italy. Of course, we know there are excellence. So it makes no difference if the child is born, for example, in the region Emilia-Romagna or in the south, one region in the south of Italy. It shouldn't make any difference. That is why I'm saying that this is a social challenge. Because apparently it could be like, could appear to be a local problem. But definitely, I would say that it is a challenge that is a national level. And really, I believe that your guidelines should be the starting point for a large discussion, large consultation. And one could be tempted to say that it is the fault is the pandemic, but we shouldn't make this mistake, because this is not the fault of the pandemic, but I would say that these are problems and issues that were there, that were existing also before the pandemic. That is why we needed to reconstitute our country from this point of view. And it's something that was there even before the COVID. So this funding should be a funding principle. So I think that here we have to address some very clear topics, like the quality is important to talk about the quality of service, but also the quality of personnel and staff. And also it is there is the need for investment in not all, at all levels. I don't want to criticize anyone, but to talk about university, we should ensure a suitable number of staff and the same level of quality. Maybe also in terms of programs, we should be more consistent. But this is something that we have to find some more consistency to increase the consistency in curriculum. And then there is the topic of support, the support to disabled people. And this should be, and we have to start from the early childhood, so that we have to prevent that young children feel themselves to be disabled. So we have to act very early, at the preschool and within nurseries until it is too late. So that is why I'm going back to the topic of a social challenge. So it's a challenge that does not involve children only, but the whole society. And of course, we have to be aware that the Italian society today is completely different compared to 30 years ago. So the demographics have changed. And we have to also, there is also the challenge of the new citizens, Italian citizens, that should be taken into account. So I'm not talking about migrants, I'm talking about new Italian citizens. I will be to be very clear about that. So our society, the Italian society today is completely different compared to the past. So we have to also protect their rights. So I was really impressed by your guidelines. So I hope that they will be the subject for a very large discussion. So I would like to launch this public consultation on the guidelines, because we have to be really aware and responsible for our republic. So of course we are aware of the difficulties created by pandemic, but the pandemic was also useful in order to underline our weaknesses and gaps. So I'd like to thank you all. Thank you to all those who worked for those guidelines. And I would like to thank all the people who will take part into this large consultation to improve them. And I really believe that this integrated system is the only way possible to improve the system. And we shouldn't make any distinction. We have the integration is something that should be guaranteed. I'm aware that integration is not an easy goal to be achieved, but we have to create some pathway for integration within education systems. We have to set some rules, some standards, common standards, and we have, of course, to correct. We have also all the conditions, also the situations which are not give this guarantee have to be corrected because they are no longer acceptable. So we have also to change the way in which some schools and the nurseries are managed if the service they provide are not in line with those standards. So I hope that will be the starting point for a very intense dialogue and discussion. So thank you again, Giancarlo, and thank you to all of you. Thank you. I would like to thank the minister. And now I give the floor to the representative of the regions. She's in charge of the technical coordination of the Conference of Regions, Commission for Education. She will talk about the territorial local system for the services for children from 0 to 6. I would like to thank the minister. Thank you for organizing this meeting that has got a very important symbolic meaning. It has to be, it's going to be so the pedagogical lines will be the subject for larger consultation. And also I give my own contribution to the guidelines, because for the Conference of Regions, I'm also a member of the Commission 06 Commission that drafted this document. So I would like to salute you on behalf of the Conference of Regions, and in particular on behalf of the Commission Instruction of Education, Training and Work, and also its representative, coordinator, Alessandra Nardini. So let's talk about the role, my role, let's say. So I was involved in the local system for 06 services. I would like to start by saying with a statement, and I would like to talk about the process that led to the drafting of these guidelines. Everything started some years ago, as the President Cirini said. So we can say that the process started in 1968 with the 440 law for the creation of the preschools, and then in the 70s, another law set up the so-called nurseries or kindergartens. So these were the main laws characterizing the 06 system. And then the process, we can say that the process ran in parallel in terms of specific skills, institutional frameworks, development lines. And only occasionally we can say that there was a dialogue and link between the 03 and 36 system, both in terms of pedagogy, but also in terms of institutional and organizational aspects. Because they were really deeply affected by local specificities. So we can identify a lot of differences in also the players. For example, as for preschools, for example, I would say that the state played a very important role, because also we should talk about state schools, but also the private schools that have been recognized by the state. As for 06 system, this one is mainly based on the local administrations, local authorities, because local authorities, they are managed, direct managers of the service. And in some cases, we had positive aspects, also some positive results with the private managers. Anyway, as I was saying, starting from the end of the 60s onwards, we can say that nurseries and preschools followed the parallel pathways, parallel processes. The first contact point was the legislative decree 65 of 2017. So let's say that for the first time, there was an integrated document. I would say that only the pedagogical guidelines that we are launching today are actually the first integrated document for nurseries and the preschools. Just a few words about the methodology that has been adopted by the Commission, by the 06 Commission, in its also based on the imprinting given by President Cirini. I would like to underline something that I believe is very important, that has been also mentioned by Professor Cirini and Professor Mantovani, And it is I think that the 06 Commission drafted this document with professionals, very qualified professionals. And this was very important as we are talking about pedagogical guidelines. And I think that also the experience and the expertise and the professionality that were the basis for these guidelines. And all these people, all the people involved in the drafting of the guidelines came from different backgrounds. So it is a pedagogical document, but it involved also some professionals coming from the administrative institutional field. For example, there was also the involvement of the ANCI, that is the National Association of Italian Municipalities. As you know, these guidelines are not a final point, but they are presented today officially so that they could be the subject for larger consultation. So I would say that those guidelines are not a final point, but it is an important milestone for the discussion on 06 segment. So today, I would like to talk about the construction of the 06 territorial local system. And this is a further step compared to the pedagogical that is going to be based on the pedagogical guidelines. So of course, the pedagogy plays a very important role, especially in the development of 06. But we have to shift also to organizational aspects. It has been mentioned many times that currently the 06 segment is based on different institutions. So we have to face this challenge. The main challenge for the 06 segment is to create a link between a 03 and 36 segments, so that in the future, on the basis of the pedagogical guidelines, we should be able to arrange a single 06 system. Which are the starting points for the creation of a 06 local system, educational system? Of course, are the local 03 system and the local 36 local system on the other hand. And we have to be able to link them together. As for the 03 local system, regions and municipalities should work a lot. In some areas, a good job has been carried out. Here, I'm here as a representative of the Conference of Regions, so I know a lot of, I know, for example, the Tuscan situation. And I would say that in many regions, such as Tuscany, for example, the 06 system is quite advanced. But also in Tuscany, for example, and in the best performing regions, there is a lot of work still to be done, so that the system is really effective and operational. For example, a topic is the coordination, the pedagogical coordination at local level, and this should be the basis for the construction of a local 06 system. And considering that the new multi-year action plan is going to be launched soon, I think that from this perspective, it should be very important to focus on the local pedagogical coordination both in terms of dedicated resources and also in terms of operating instructions and guidance. Because I believe that this should be a guarantee for the construction of a local system. And I think that regions can play a very important role. They should support this type of system. Also, having a look at the best practices in the most advanced regions. That is another starting point in order to start developing a 06 local system. And this is the presence of a 36 local system. And in this case, the key role should be played by state. In order to have a 06 system, the starting point should be very strong 03 and 36 pedagogical coordination. As for 36 segment, this could be a starting point to work together. So we should invest on some pedagogical coordination, especially for 3-6 segment. Currently, there are some instances, but they are quite sporadical. And also listening to the previous speeches, it is clear that starting from the 60s onwards, we can say that the 3-6 segment was developed, but perhaps there was not a clear perspective in the way in which this segment has been developed. A positive aspect has been the fact that preschool has been introduced into a larger educational, into larger school clusters. But perhaps this reduced the attention for preschools and maybe increased the higher degree of attention towards the primary schools. But our goal should be that of creating a synergy between 06 and 36 system. So in order to achieve this goal, we should invest on the 36 pedagogical coordination so that we will have a full dialogue with the 06 pedagogical coordination. I'm saying this and this should be important, especially at the starting point. So we should have a well-structured 06 system, but the final point, the goal that we want to achieve is an integrated 06 system. So our goal should be an integration between the two segments, 06, 03, and 36. So the two segments should become a well-integrated system, including nurseries and preschools. So we should achieve this goal, integration and synergy. And the basis for this foundation will be those pedagogical guidelines, and are a very key tool, because it's the first time that we have an integrated document, a consistent document that is going to provide a framework, and it's a clear signal that is given by the Minister for Education. So our challenge, the challenge that we have to face is to bring forward those guidelines, and we have to focus on other aspects from management, administrative issues, for example. And we talked about this within the 06 Commission. we should also have some managing board, let's say, as for the and this point of reference should be represented by the Minister of Education. So I really appreciate the work that has been carried out starting from the decree 66, because now also the Minister of Education is paying more attention to the 06 segment with respect to the past. So our goal, the goal we have to achieve in order for a better care of the early childhood is based, of course, on the pedagogical guidelines that are tracing the pathway, but these guidelines should be followed by organizational choices at national level. And this should be taken into account. That is the need not to level, but to harmonize different local and regional situations in terms of 06 system. And for this, we need a national coordination from the Minister of Education. We need, of course, funds and resources, but we know that there are some available funds. And of course, all the regions and the local territories should receive kind of support in terms of organization, administrative, and also monitoring. I would like to draw I would like to conclude by making reference to the Professor Libro. So we listened in order to have a very high quality 06 system. Of course, it's very important to rely on high quality personnel and staff. So professionalization is key, and this, of course, is a clear concept that has been transmitted by the European Commission. So following on this path, I think that Professor Lebro made a reference to the importance of professionalization of the staff. We did a lot. As Professor Mantovani was saying, a lot was done in order to increase the professionalism of 06 and 06 personnel, teachers and educators and assistants. In order to, the first one of the positive element that's been identified by the decree 65 is the academic qualification also for the assistant, also for the educators of the 06 staff. So we should perhaps going beyond and try to further develop these reflections on the basic training for educators and operators, because so we should talk about the basic training for 06 staff, so that perhaps in a close future we could achieve about we will be able to harmonize the staff within the 06 segment. Now I give the floor to the Councillor for Education for the Municipality of Bergamo. She's a representative of National Association of Italian Municipalities, and she will talk about the educational services as community-based facilities.
Thank you, Francesca. Good afternoon to all the participants. Let me welcome and thank Minister Bianchi and all the speakers who haven't been before me. Thanks from the bottom of my heart. Thanks to the Minister of Education on behalf of the National Association of Italian Municipalities and their Chairman, not just for the opportunity given to be here today, but also for the involvement in the works of the Commission for the integrated system of education and care, as well as the consultation stage, which is kicked off today. I will try to sum up for you the point of view of the municipalities. Our point of view is diverse. We have to take into account the differences and the characteristics of the different territories, but also of the social characteristic, the demographic characteristics, and the cultural features, as well as educational resources that are rooted within our territories. This involves making a step forward in the scale, where at the very heart, we have to put the different aspects of the children of the local territory with all possible declinations. Let me insist on the fact that our Commission has drafted a pedagogical document, which is really far-sighted. It has brought together the possibility to collect any contribution in order to enrich our document, which is, as it is, quite an advanced publication, in particular when Dr. Trini and Professor Montavani illustrated the document. This consultation phase might be interesting and might remind us of the work that prepared Decree 65 of 2017, when we approved this, we were able to collect all the experiences and the measure adopted by the territories which are already working according to this integrated vision and an outlook in terms of education. I am referring in particular to governance table, regional tables, preschool clusters, as well as the variety of integration services for early age children, which are already implemented in each territory. That challenge for the future will be to try experiences, models, in order to turn them into a common heritage, in order to open the floor and open the doors to a wide and a broad reflection on education and care. These services are intended as community-based services because these are the very first experiences of proximity services for the youngest ones and their families. Of course, we have to foster the ideas of education and care that needs to be adjusted to the leisure time, working time of the families, in particular in our country list of women and mothers. In these services, we can actually try and see and touch with our very hands the different connotations at different levels. Of course, let me conclude by mentioning the present times. We are trying to see the end of this pandemic period. Of course, we cannot take on the illusion that everything will go back to the previous situation. No, we have new situations that must take into account at least three elements, which have arisen in the last year, but of course, like Minister Bianchi said, were pre-existent. The first element is that the educational and economic poverty has deepened. They were already present in our territories, but they are stronger now. The second element is that the bubble school actually worked, but it brought forward the partition between services devoted to children aged 0 to 3 as opposed to those devoted to 3 to 6, etc. We've seen it in the interaction with the different institutional levels on our territories, as well as in the approach and the indications coming from local health services when it was about integrating the different regional systems. Like Professor Cerini and Professor Mantovani said, we have a rich pedagogical and educational experience that can help us in resuming the pathway uh, drafted in this pedagogical guidelines. My third element of course is this drastic decline in the birth rate in our country. While investing resources, sharing the same goals means acting to counter this trend, possibly stop it, and include new Italian citizens. This means that we have to work together so that our parameters in terms of offer of services for early childhood may actually grow in terms of quality, quantity, accessibility, as it is stated in the pedagogical guidelines. I think that this all actually says that we do not want to be a country who's sitting and just observing this decline in birth rate, and that actually might invert the trend. No, we want, by adopting these pedagogical guidelines, insist on the attention and care that should be devoted to the early age, to the early childhood. It is an engagement that we wanted to take on now. Thanks for your attention. Thank you, Loredana, for this very passionate speech that you have offered. You said that we have to work together. Indeed, this is the pathway we want to embark on, starting from this public consultation and the publication of the guidelines, because like the minister himself said, the guarantee for any child in our country to receive quality education since the very first age is reality. I have to give the floor now to Ms. Assunta Palermo for the final remarks, as well as for some practical indication. Thank you. Thank you. And first and foremost, I have to thank all the participants in the Commission for the wonderful work that was deployed. Let me thank all the speakers and the members of the Commission who have offered very important contributions that will, of course, accompany the work that needs to be completed, of course. Like one of the speakers mentioned, the drafting of Legislative Decree 65. We know that nothing happens by chance in life. I met Dr. Puglisi and here in my first days at the ministry, and one of the first engagements that I had when I was nominated appointed coordinator was the revision of Legislative Decree 65. And I do remember all the stop and go moments of the Commission together with Giancarlo Cerini, whom I would like to thank once again. We resumed our works and despite the pandemic situation, we're still here. Of course, this is no final meeting. This is the opening meeting because we have launched this consultation phase. So coming to this specific aspect, I would love to share with the participants who have joined us together to share some information with you. First, the text of the current version of the document of the current educational guidelines was published on our website on the section dedicated to the 0 to 6 range age. Now, if you click on this section, we have added today, on the occasion of the seminar of the symposium, we have added some innovations and improvements in the days to come. And on the same section, you will also see two attention points. a questionnaire and survey that can be used by teachers, coordinators, headmasters, managers of public and private services. Then you have a specific form for information collection, so that each group and stakeholders group who can gather. Sorry, these documents are already available. I was not updated, sorry. Probably they have updated it while we were having the seminar. So I confirm that you can already see on our website these documents. Of course, these two actions will be very important because dwelling on all information, insights, inputs that will be gathered, we will embark on a in-depth study phase. Of course, there will be national and local consultations being held in the coming days. It could be national, organized by us, by the ministry and the Directorate for Coordination, together with associations, organizations, regions. But also there will be local meetings being held, organized by our colleagues, the regional directors of school offices in each region. I take the opportunity to greet them all because they are probably joining us remotely. These meetings will be addressed to the professionals of the sector. So I think these meetings will be particularly significant because they will actually go to the heart of the problems that we are faced with every day. Let me thank every person who has cooperated in holding this meeting. Of course, we are looking forward an integrated system. So let's say good luck for our work and for our job. We really need to keep on working together. Thank you.